Right, here we go again. It's Monday afternoon. 2 deer in camp now. It's not bad.
In the basin there's a bit of a marshy, swampy bit. So there's a bit of water and some green thick around it. The animals like it. Wallabies have come in and had a feed. Wind's perfect. Picked up a couple of other wallabies just down here with the thermal. Amazing, in the daylight the thermal works. I would never have been able to see those wallabies. The hardest thing I've found so far is when you find hard to judge distance. So finding the animal in your binos afterwards. It's quite hard.
So, no joy last night. Right as the last light faded and time ticked off, half an hour after sunset you're allowed to hunt till, and it was literally 2 minutes before that I heard, assuming it was a deer, drop down into the creek and jump back up the other side. Pretty unmistakable sound. So yeah, anyway, I was out of light. It was fun using the thermal, being able to spot various different things as it came around. The wallabies I couldn't see with the binos or the naked eye, which is clear as day. It's just pretty unreal. So anyway, it was a good test for them. They don't work in the fog. Most of the mornings up here are foggy, so that sort of rules them out until after it lifts, but that's all right.
So we're back. Been back a week or so now, and it's given me a really good opportunity to have a look at the footage, have a think about the process, the product, how it worked, what it did well, what it didn't do well. And it also gave me time to think about some of the comments that people make. Well, if you've got a thermal, is it shooting or is it hunting? Is it hunting or is it shooting? Can I get all of that? And I'm not an expert in these devices at all. In fact, taking away a thermal device on a hunting trip, for me this is the first. Yes, I've picked one up and looked through it because a mate had one once or twice, but I've never taken a product like this on a hunt for the purpose of tracking down and shoot animals. And that's what's become available to us now in state forests. And the concern for some is that now I can just go into a state forest and pick the thermal up and blaze away, and you know, we're going to be taking more than our fair share and those sorts of things. And does it take away from the hunt? Well, for some it might, but for me that absolutely was not the case. So I used this InfiRay E3 Plus, it's the Eye series, predominantly throughout the whole hunt. I chose this one over some of the other ones just because of its size. It fit really well in my Bino rig, and you can see here in the Bino rig just sat next to me, I took one of the items out of my Bino rig and replaced it with this. Now you hear, you know, when you go and talk to people that have hunted a lot and ask them for advice, they say walk slower, look more, cover less ground, look harder, those sorts of comments. I'm sure you've heard them. No one's saying walk faster, look less. It's not the deal. And I found that this device made me do that. And not because it slowed me down, but because I was able to pull apart a piece of ground a lot more methodically. So I could move myself into a gully, I could clear that gully, and take the thermal out, just like I would the binos, but with more accuracy, and I could scan across that gully, and I could see that there was nothing there. Or I could see that there was a wallaby there, and I could pick my path around it so I didn't scare it off, didn't make any noise, and I could leave undisturbing, you know, without disturbing things. could have 3 good glances across a gully and know that there was nothing there. So ultimately, by slowing me down, it sped me up, if that makes sense. Because I was able to sit there, clear a gully, and then just march. Move, cover the ground, get right through it. Whereas before, I would come across with my binoculars, and I'd look and I'd scan, and I'd look and I'd scan. I wouldn't see anything, but I would still sneak through that gully, just in case I'd missed something popped up. Now, there was never a scenario when I was using the thermal that an animal popped up and ran out from in front of me, which is usually the case when you're state forest hunting. An animal will be flushed out because you're walking through it. Well, I was able to see those animals first, and I could pick my path, and it was excellent for that. Funnily enough, on the entire trip, I only got deer in the thermal twice. Once I was able to record, the other one, it was too quick for me to do so. But I spent a lot of time behind it. The good thing about this device is the battery kept up with what I was doing from Monday through till Friday, and it was only Friday afternoon that the battery went flat on this device. So it would go into my Bino rig, I'd pick it up, I'd scan, go back in the Bino rig. This particular model turns on and off by opening the lid. So I could just close the lid, put it back in there, and I'd carry on. What did I think about it as a tool for using it? So for clearing the gully and speeding me up, it was excellent. Like I said, I could clear a gully, and then I could move through that gully with purpose and get to the next gully, and then scan, and then move, and then scan and move, and continue on. And I covered a lot more ground, although I did it more carefully, if that makes sense. So that's what this was good for. It wasn't all roses, and this is the thing. People think you take a thermal, you can see everything, you can just shoot away. Well, it wasn't. That's not the case. The forests that we hunt are quite dense. You can't just see through all of that. It doesn't work that way. So what I found was when I did pick up heat signatures, I had to identify those heat signatures, and that took quite some time. If I was using the binos, more often than not, the animals that I was picking up in here, I wouldn't have even known existed. And 99% of those animals were not the target species. They were bunnies and roos and wallabies, is basically what I was seeing in the thermal the most. When a heat signature showed up in the thermal, I would spend a lot more time trying to figure out what that was. So in effect, I was wasting time doing that, and this gave me more information than necessary, and it wasn't always a perfect picture because it was in the distance. All I knew that was up that gully, under those trees, there was a heat signature. I'm like, oh, that could be a deer. If I had my binos and I didn't have the thermal, I wouldn't have even seen that, and I would have carried on and it would have bounced away and it potentially scaring game away. So it's good and bad for that. The other thing about these devices, and I know that there are products out there that give you a range, a distance to target to that heat signature. This one doesn't do that, as far as I know. But when you see something in the thermals, you don't know how far away it is. So it could look quite large, but that could be a bird quite close. Or it could look quite small, but that could be the head of a kangaroo at 200 meters. And I found it really hard to start with to locate that heat signature when I took the thermal down. So I'd look up, oh, there's something there. I'd look down, I couldn't see it. I'd pick my binos up and I'd have a look. I still couldn't see it. I'd pick my rifle up, put it on 16-pound zoom. Sometimes I could pick it up. So it became difficult to hunt with a thermal to a point because you could spend a lot of time trying to figure out what was what. Now, I know people that have used these devices and they say you get used to that. You get used to where the heat is on specific animals. Apparently, and I haven't figured this out yet, but the heat in a kangaroo is in an obviously different place to that of a deer, to that of a dog, things like that. So you get used to where the heat is. They're little things that I think I would figure out over time. But for a new guy with a thermal in a state forest, I found it frustrating that I knew that there were deer in front of me or animals in front of me and I couldn't see them. But that's not a bad thing. That's a frustrating thing for me, the individual, but it's just showing me how much I don't see when I'm walking through the bush, and that's a learning aid, I guess, and a really practical tool to do it. I had lent a few of these devices out to other hunters on the trip, and they had the same feedback. Man, there's so much life out there, but I can't find it with the naked eye of the binos, because we're in the bush, we're not in open paddocks. A lot of the time you'll see people using these sitting up on a hill, shooting down over cleared paddocks, dogs that are worrying sheep, those sorts of things. It's not the way these things work. So I would have walked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday before I got the first deer in the thermal. So I asked the question back, does it make me a shooter, not a hunter? If you want to ask that question, I don't believe so. I think this gives you the ability to see things that are in a valley, but it gives you another set of challenges that you need to overcome at the same time. I think they're a brilliant addition to a state forest hunter's kit. I think if you ever have the opportunity to try it out, you should, but you'll soon see that it is not the thing that is going to make you a successful hunter. It's just another tool, like binos, high-powered rifles, scopes, drones, various other things. It's another tool in the bag. Anyway, my thoughts on the matter for now. Putting the scope on a rifle this weekend. Got some wild dog activity around home. I'm going to give that a run for its money. But as far as the state forest hunting goes, I think these are a great idea.